In the Jazz Age, the neighborhood felt like a city within a city. Steam drifted from bamboo baskets and tea houses. Butchers sang out their prices on Stockton Street, and banquet halls glowed with mirrored lights and linen that smelled faintly of jasmine tea. Kitchens worked with a rhythm that never stopped. Fishmongers wheeled in the morning catch, grocers measured spices that had crossed oceans, and cooks tested the heat of their woks by sound and by instinct. The menus read like a map of Cantonese memory, rewritten with California markets and Pacific tides. Some dishes appeared only when a family marked a wedding or a business celebrated a first profit. Others kept workers full through long nights, simple and honest and steaming hot. Every plate carried more than ingredients. It carried ancestry, pride, and a promise to hold tight to home in a place that demanded resilience. This list gathers 15 dishes that captured that golden moment. Each one was a story told in food, a snapshot of flavor and craft in the 1920s when Chinatown rebuilt after the earthquake and set down deeper roots. The city changed and so did the menus, but the core remained the same. Honor the guest, cook with care, waste nothing, and let the table speak for itself. 1. Roast Peking duck with plum sauce. Walk into a banquet room, and the first signal of celebration would be rows of lacquered ducks glistening by the kitchen door. Cooks pumped air under the skin, dried the birds until the surface tightened, then roasted them until the skin turned deep mahogany, crisp enough to shatter at the touch, yet leaving the meat moist and fragrant. Pancakes as thin as tissue arrived in warm stacks. Slivers of scallion and cucumber added a fresh snap, and a thick plum sauce tied it all together with tang, ginger warmth, and a hint of sweetness. This dish was never casual. A single duck in the middle of the decade could cost several dollars when a room could be rented for little more than that in a month. That was the point. Ordering it told the room that the host had prospered and wished to share that good fortune in public. In a neighborhood still showing scars of fire and quake, the first bite carried the taste of survival as much as mastery. 2. Steamed whole rock cod with ginger and scallion. When a whole fish came to the table, the noise often dimmed because a whole fish carried more than aroma. It carried wishes for unity and luck. Local rock cod from the cold Pacific was valued for mild sweetness and delicate flesh. The cook cleaned it with care, steamed it just to the moment when the meat loosened from the bone, then scattered ginger and scallions over the top. Smoking hot peanut oil poured across the aromatics, releasing a perfume that traveled the length of the room. Soy mixed with the juices to make a light sauce that did not hide the flavor of the fish. The head and tail confirmed completeness. Tradition sent the head to the most honored diner. No part was wasted. It was not the most expensive course on a big night, but it was the one that most clearly said the host had shopped wisely at dawn and trusted the kitchen fully. 3. Barbecued pork char siu. Red gloss in a window could stop foot traffic. Strips of pork hung like ribbons, lacquered by maltose or honey, stained a festive red by fermented bean curd or red rice, and perfumed with 5 spice, soy, garlic, and a splash of rice wine. The roasting was simple to describe and hard to perfect. The meat had to roast hot enough to caramelize at the edges without drying out. A few thick slices wrapped in paper might cost only a couple of dimes and would still drip onto the finger. In a dining room, the slices arrived thicker, juices glimmering at the cut, heat rising from the plate. Every cook guarded a personal marinade, each one sworn to be the best. The real secret lived in repetition and attention. Char siu was a calling card. If the pork was right, diners trusted the rest of the menu. 4. Fried crab claws with shrimp paste. This was a course designed for applause. A snow-white claw was cleaned and readied as a handle, then wrapped in a cushion of seasoned shrimp paste. The filling carried minced shrimp, a touch of pork fat for moisture, chopped water chestnut for a quiet crunch, white pepper, a touch of Shaoxing wine, and a little egg white to bind. Each claw went into hot oil and emerged golden and delicate. The shell stayed crisp while the interior stayed tender. A light soy and sesame dip waited at the side. Guests picked them up with their fingers, dipped and bit slowly while the table watched. Land and sea worked together in a single mouthful. A plate cost more than a simple noodle dish and less than a bird nest, and it earned its place with sheer delight. 5. Bird nest soup with rock sugar. This dessert soup spoke in a whisper, not a shout. The nests, gathered from swiftlets along dangerous cliffs in Southeast Asia, arrived through merchant networks that were quiet by design. The kitchen soaked and picked them clean, then simmered the strands in a clear syrup made from rock sugar. The texture did the talking. Slippery, silky, and tender, it was unlike anything else. Families with means believed in restorative qualities. Hosts used it to signal respect for elders and honored guests. A single serving could approach the cost of a week of groceries for a working household. The flavor was gentle and refined, a moment of calm after richer courses. In a time before home refrigeration was universal, a bowl served cool felt like a marvel. 6. Lotus leaf sticky rice. Lo my guy. The server set down little green bundles tied neatly with thread. Untying the knot released a breath of steam that smelled like soy, sesame, and mushrooms. Inside the lotus leaf sat sticky rice with separate glossy grains. Hidden in the rice were pockets of flavor. Chinese sausage provided sweetness and fat. Pork belly brought tenderness. Soaked shiitake mushrooms concentrated earthiness, and dried shrimp added a savory snap. The leaf served as both wrapper and seasoning as its aroma moved into every bite. Dock workers took one to go at dawn and stayed full for hours. Banquets used it as a warm pause between showpiece courses. A single parcel cost a few coins and felt like unwrapping a small gift that tasted of family kitchens far away. 7. Steamed pork buns. Char siu bao. Comfort lived inside a steamer. Char siu bao were cloud white and softly domed, their tops just beginning to split under pressure. Inside sat chopped barbecue pork bound with a glossy sauce made with oyster sauce, soy, and a little sugar for balance. The dough was pillowy and faintly sweet. Tear one open and steam rolled out carrying scents of caramelized meat and warm flour. A single bun at a nickel was a warm lunch for a worker walking back to the shop. TR travel was a warm lunch for a worker walking back to the shop. A basket at a family table meant someone had arrived early enough to catch the first batch. Shops sold out long before closing, which only grew the desire to return the next morning. 8. Soy sauce chicken. This was the quiet genius of the Southern kitchen. A whole chicken simmered gently in a master stock that the cook never truly finished. Soy sauce formed the base, and aromatics layered on complexity. Star anise, cassia or cinnamon, ginger, orange peel, rock sugar, and sometimes a little sand ginger or cloves moved in with each batch. The stock grew richer with every bird that passed through it. Some kitchens joked that their pot contained flavors from a previous generation. The braise colored the meat all the way to the bone and stained even the marrow. The skin turned glossy and brown, the meat stayed tender, and the flavor sat warm and deep. Families bought a whole bird to carve over rice at home. Banquets served it between seafood and dim sum, a course that reset the palate without lowering the mood. 9. Crispy roast suckling pig. This was spectacle wrapped in skill. A young pig was rubbed inside and out with salt, sugar, and 5 spice. The skin was pricked and brushed, sometimes with a sweet glaze, then roasted patiently over coals until the surface blazed into a glassy shell. When the cleaver hit, the cracks sounded across the room. The first pieces set down were usually crisp skin with a trace of fat and a whisper of meat, the perfect bite in this style. The ears and snout carried a special status that combined flavor, crunch, and tradition. A whole pig marked a high moment in life. Marriages, New Year gatherings, and new businesses called for this kind of display. The cost could rival a month of rent, but the message was worth the price if the host wished to mark prosperity with confidence. 10. Dungeness crab with black bean sauce. This dish could only have been born in San Francisco. The local crab was sweet and meaty, with claws and legs that held tender flesh. The cook steamed a live crab just long enough to set the meat, then chopped its shell on into pieces that would catch sauce in every crevice. In the wok, fermented black beans met ginger, garlic, scallions, and a few small chilies. A quick toss set the beans and aromatics into the shell and across the meat. The result was a combination of sea sweetness and deep savory from the fermented beans, with just enough heat to wake the palate. Eating it was openly messy. Diners cracked shells with teeth and fingers chasing flavor from knuckle to knuckle. It was the table at its most lively, and it could turn strangers into friends by the end of the plate. 11. Winter melon soup with dried scallops. Sometimes the serving vessel did as much talking as the soup. A pale green winter melon, polished and carved with dragons or flowers, arrived at the table as a steaming terrine. The kitchen had hollowed it and used the melon itself to perfume a clear broth, rich with dried scallops, slices of cured ham, mushrooms, and tiny tidbits of seafood. As the soup simmered, the melon softened and little pearls of its flesh slipped into the liquid to add gentle sweetness. Ladles moved from melon to bowl and back again in a slow ritual. The dish signaled money and respect for custom at the same time. It was light yet layered, elegant without waste, and it slowed the pace of a feast in the best way. Beef chow, fun, whole fun. The sound of this dish said as much as the taste. A wok heated until almost white sent out a sharp hiss when oil hit the steel. Wide rice noodles went in with marinated beef, bean sprouts, and scallions. The beef was tenderized by velveting, a technique that coats slices with a light mixture of cornstarch and egg white so that the meat stays supple over high heat. Soy sauce and oyster sauce stained the noodles a glossy brown. The goal was woke, the breath of the woke, a smoky sear captured in seconds. In the 1920th, this was a plate that could appear at street level, counters, or at a family table late at night. It filled the belly and left a memory of smoke and sweetness that hung in the air after the plate was empty. 13. Jellyfish salad with sesame oil. For newcomers, this course could look like a dare. For Cantonese diners, it was a quiet point of pride. Properly prepared jellyfish became translucent ribbons, crisp and springy at the same time. Weeks of preparation were not required, but patience was. The jellyfish was soaked and rinsed to remove salt and soften, then sliced thin and chilled. A dressing of sesame oil, rice vinegar, and soy added warmth and brightness. Toasted sesame seeds scattered over the top gave a nutty finish. This salad was often placed between heavy courses to refresh the mouth and sharpen appetite for what came next. It signaled a host with confidence and access to ingredients that most of the city barely recognized. 14. Sesame balls, jiandui. Before teacups were refilled for a final time, a platter of golden spheres often arrived. Each ball wore a coat of sesame seeds that released a nutty scent as soon as the plate touched the table. The dough inside was made from glutinous rice flour, which turned into a delicate shell in hot oil. As the balls fried, they bobbed and turned until they became light and crisp. The center held sweet red bean paste, or sweet lotus seed paste, smooth and gentle. The pleasure came from the contrast. First crunch, then a tender chew, then the soft, sweet interior. They were festive by origin and everyday by demand. A few pennies each and welcome at any hour. 15. Preserved plum candy. A meal did not need a grand finale to linger. Sometimes the server placed a small dish in the middle of the table, with wrinkled plums dusted with a little sugar or salt. A single piece gave sweet, sour, and salty notes in sequence, each one rising and fading slowly. These plums traveled well and kept well. Apothecaries and grocers sold them by weight, scooped into paper packets. For many immigrants, they tasted like markets in Guangdong and afternoons of childhood. For busy workers, they settled the stomach after a heavy meal and turned the walk home into a quiet meditation on comfort. Food in the neighborhood during the 920s was more than sustenance. It was continuity and pride made visible. The dishes on this list evolved from traditions in Guangdong and nearby regions, then bent to match the markets and tides of the Pacific. Dungeness crab became a Cantonese wok dish, and winter melon, from Chinese fields, shared a table with mushrooms that had crossed an ocean. Sausu in the window worked as both aroma and advertisement. A roast pig spoke in the language of celebration that any diner could understand without a word. A master stock held seasons of memory in a single pot. A simple bun could steady a worker and remind a family that they belonged. A century later, you can still hear the echo of that era if you listen carefully. It is in the percussion of a wok, the glint of a fish eye on a platter, the crisp snap of a pigskin under a cleaver, and the hush that falls when a melon terrine arrives. The neighborhood changed, the city changed, and trends will continue to come and go, yet bowls of clear broth, plates of shiny noodles, and a little dish of preserved fruit continue to carry the same message. Share what you have. Treat the ingredient with respect. Honor your guests. Tie past to present with flavor and with care.